Alrighty, so thank you again for joining us as we continue to read the book of Mark. Last time when we finished off, so thank you again for joining us as we continue to read the book of Mark.
I'm sorry about that.
Last time when we... Alright, so just so you know, one of the reasons why I do that starting soon screen is so I can try to avoid doing that, but I managed to do it today anyways. But we will continue to read Mark chapter 4. Yesterday, where we finished off, we were just hearing about how Jesus called the disciples to travel across the Sea of Galilee, and the storm rose up, and the disciples were scared, and they woke up Jesus and said, hey, you can let us drown, which obviously that was not Jesus' intent. And so Jesus challenged them and asked them, specifically, he said, why are you so afraid? Do you have no faith? So that is where we left off. And now we will continue to read and continue to hear how Jesus continued to minister in the book of Mark. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot. But he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send him out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders, named Jairus, came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet insisted on getting better. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, "If I just touch his clothes, I will be healed." Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once Jesus realized that power had gone from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet and trembled with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead," they said. "Why bother the teacher anymore?" Overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, "Don't be afraid, just believe." He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion, with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him, and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha koum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this, they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this and told them to give her something to eat. So that's the end of Mark 5. Now, one of the challenges I always get reading that specific verse is when the father is actually presented with the fact that his daughter's died. I just, you imagine the grief that he's going through. He traveled a distance to find Jesus because he knew that Jesus could heal. And yet this woman had distracted Jesus from getting to his house. And during that time, his daughter had died. And yet when that happens, what does Jesus say? He actually says, "Don't be afraid, just believe." And you could just imagine the grief that this father would be feeling with his friends telling him that his daughter had died. And with hearing that, but then having this teacher, this person who he had gone to ask to heal, he says, "Don't be afraid, just believe." I think Jesus is wanting to say that to us so often. Like, don't be afraid, believe and trust in him. When things around you are going like you don't, his kid had died. I mean, I couldn't imagine what he must have been going through. And yet he hears from Jesus, "Don't be afraid." And I think that is so often a challenge that we get from Christ is, do not be afraid. Trust him. He will provide for you. He'll provide for the family. We have to remember during this time that, all the time, we have to remember that the people, whether it's, your wife, whether it is your children, that they're God's first and you're second, and that he has actually entrusted them to you. And that in trusting them to you, I mean, it's a huge, he trusts us in that. He trusts us to look after his children. And we need to be willing to, I guess, lay them down at his feet and say, they're his first and ours second. And it's challenging. It's something that I often struggle with, to remember that the challenges that my kids are going through with their health, the challenges my wife's going through with their health, that they are God's children first. And he's entrusted them to me while I'm here. And at the same time, I need to trust them to him, trust their future to him. My eldest son is in year 12, and, next year he's looking at going to university, and considering some of the things he'll probably be exposed to at university, I need to trust that, God knows what he is doing, and that that he is God's first. And I need to rest in that. And at the same time, trust that, God has sort of established enough faith in him that, he won't go astray. So I think I guess that's kind of the thing that God's speaking to me right now, and maybe he's speaking it to you as well. that Jesus is saying, don't be afraid. Just believe. Put your trust in him, your faith in him. Sometimes that's easier said than done. But like I said yesterday when we read Mark 4, Jesus even tells us to ask for faith. That's something I need to do daily. And it might be something you need to do as well. So, seek God, ask him, how, Lord, do you want me to grow in faith? And Lord, give me faith. I need faith. I don't have faith. Give me faith. Yeah, I'll leave it there again. So thank you. These are short, just as we go through the Bible, as we read through Mark. We've got a total of, how many chapters do we have in Mark? 16 chapters. So that'll take us a bit over 3 weeks, since I'll be doing this Monday to Friday. And so tomorrow and Sunday, I won't be on here doing the Bible verse. Hope you guys have a good weekend. Pray God's blessing over you. And we will catch you again on Monday. So again, thank you for listening. And you know what? Send a message. You can head over to missionarycoach.org. Use the contact button on there, and you can be in touch. Let me know how I can pray for you. Let me know, what if reading through the Bible is something that's encouraging to you. But again, thank you for joining me tonight as we read through Mark chapter 5, and we'll chat to you on Monday when we read through Mark chapter 6. Thanks.